Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Chacha and Mo Show. And today we're doing a special birthday episode for Grand-Dadie. And we're going to be talking about some things about him, some things I've wanted to know, some things maybe Chacha has wanted to know about my experience. I don't know, but
Yeah.
get into it all today.
What is your first memory of Grand-Daddy?
That's hard to say. I feel like there's like a little like fogginess because I feel like there's a lot at the same time where like I might have first remembered. Um, I remember very early some of our like vacations to Toronto. I think those were my first like pretty vivid memories were, being at their place in Toronto and playing games with them and playing the piano and
Oh, wow.
doing rainbow looms and stuff.
Wait. Playing the piano? Dad played the piano with you?
Hmm. You remember the piano they had at the place in Toronto?
Huh?
Yeah, I remember that a bit. Remember when he got me a harmonica, kind of played a little musical orchestra together.
Oh, how sweet. When I was in gosh, I must have been about sixth grade, I started to learn the recorder, and he decided that he was going to learn also, and got me this beautiful recorder. And I played soprano and he played alto, and we actually joined like a recorder society and would go and play with other people. And it was so cool because instead of like me learning, he plays guitar, he plays piano, it was like he wanted to learn something that I was learning. And then it became our thing, which was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
um I'm trying to remember, I mean, I do, of course, I was there when you were born, and I remember, them coming out to visit you. And I just have this one really, and it's not a memory, it's a picture, so it's kind of a cheat. But
Hmm.
I remember there's this picture where he put you down. He was holding you, and I guess he wanted to put you down, and we were just taking a picture of you two holding hands. But he put you down in some dirt.
Yeah.
It was in a tree. It was like in front of a tree. And Don was so mad that he put you in dirt,
Yep.
and you were so happy.
I bet I was. I think kids are pretty happy just playing in dirt when they're little.
Yeah, totally.
It's
Totally. But
funny
he
that
had
you
no
mentioned
idea that
the
he'd done anything wrong, and it was just the cutest thing.
it's funny you mentioned the recorder because that was another one of my very early memories of him was when I started learning the recorder in school. I was probably in like might have even been kindergarten. It was like kindergarten or like first grade. And we started learning the recorder. And I think at one point we got to take them home with us. And I think I FaceTimed him or we Skyped or whatever. And I played him something on the recorder. And it was these little like, little dollar store plastic recorders. And then I remember the next time we saw him, he had gotten me this really nice, like fancy wooden recorder.
Yeah.
Um, and I kept that for a long time. And then I remember bringing it back to school for the music class, and then like just getting to show everyone my bougie baller recorder that my grandpa got me.
At what point did you realize what Granddaddy did for a living? At what point did you realize that he was someone who used his mind for his work?
I think it was very early. I think I got that kind of scientist vibe from him pretty early on. Um, I don't know. He's always been very clever, very smart. So I think I kind of always knew.
Really?
Yeah.
I have this one specific memory because I remember asking him for help on a math problem, and he showed it to me. He explained it to me the way that we got the result. And then I remember I got the paper back and the teacher failed me. So I tried to explain it to her the way that he had explained it to me, and it was over both of our heads.
Hmm.
So it didn't, it was just like, I think it was a pretty elementary thing, and the way that he explained it, I mean, of course the answer that we had come up with was right, but for some reason the teacher didn't see that, and I wasn't able to explain it the way that he explained it. So it was almost like I had this superpower at my disposal, but it was too powerful and I couldn't use it right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is that, dad he started out teaching and he ended up teaching. And that's a whole other skill set to have when you have the kind of engineering mind that he does to figure things out and understand things. I also remember one time when we were living in France, I had a science class and I was given this assignment, and it was basically to like reverse engineer a game so that and I don't remember, I used to have this game when I was little. I don't know if you had it, but the idea was you had these two electrodes and you would it was a matching game. So you would do like it would be like types of flowers, and it would say the names on one side and the image on the other, and you had to match them, and if you did, it would light up.
Hmm.
So I had to create a game that would do that. And I had to figure out how you would connect things so that it only lit up when it was the right pairing, right?
Yeah.
I remember it was a 3-day weekend and I had 3 days to figure it out. And then I could like be done and just have fun. But I could not figure it out. And I worked on it and I worked on it. And I was so, so frustrated. And I will never forget mom telling me that basically this is what dad does all day
Hmm.
is, solve impossible problems and just come at them from different ways.
Yeah.
And the secret to what I was trying to do, I had half of it. I did have the correct answers connected by foil. Like it was a battery, and the foil created the connection. But what I couldn't figure out was how to have all these pieces of foil and not have them interact.
Mm.
And so again, I'll never forget, right? You never forget your mistakes. Um, it was scotch tape. You had to put scotch tape wherever they connected and they shouldn't, so that only where they connected and they should would light up.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was like a 3-day weekend down the drain because I never figured it out. But I did walk away with a huge respect
Oh
for
yeah.
what it is to have to come up with things and create solutions, and think way outside the box, right?
I thought you were gonna say you walked away with a huge respect from your school and like the teacher and whatnot.
Well, that goes almost without saying because that year that I spent in the French schools was by far the most challenging and the most successful that I've ever been at school. It was both, which is kind of weird. Um, I was really stimulated and I was really yeah, I guess it was just that right combination because otherwise it's either been kind of a little bit easy and not challenging, or so challenging and so isolating that I didn't really end up learning because I was so freaked out about what
Hmm.
I didn't know, and I didn't have the tools to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it was that instance, the way that things were presented to me. I was in 6th grade, and it was in France, and it was just very collaborative with the teachers, and I felt I felt like I understood things in a way that I never did before or even since.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we were in France for that year because dad had a sabbatical from his job, and he went to work at a polytechnic institute. So back then, that was pretty freaking special to take a step out of our lives that we had in the US, and be able to go and live this completely different life in a completely different place. Um, and that was I think I know that that was a really important experience for us, and it really bonded us as a family.
Yeah.
And your mom was so annoying because she picked up French first. Yeah, she was the baby, and we know how it is to be the oldest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember Grand-Daddy's French, like as it like slowly became much better as I got older.
Oh,
That
really?
was
You feel
something I
like it?
remember.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, maybe I misremembering, but I feel like as I got older and older, like his French got like way better and like I don't know.
That's interesting. Well, obviously, I mean, he learned he had a like a book understanding of French, but not so much the spoken until we went over there. And yeah, I mean, he totally challenged himself, right? Imagine
Hmm.
going to work in another country when it's not your first or even your second language. I think German was his second language. So it was just, super, super challenging. And he was up for the challenge, and he totally, the older you get, the harder it is to absorb new languages
Yeah.
specifically. There's something in the brain. When you're under 12 years old, it's like osmosis. You're like a sponge.
Yeah.
It just, you're not even thinking about it. I just remember one day, Dawn coming home from school, like 4 weeks in, and just, she was just fluent.
Hmm.
It took me a little bit longer, but it was still super quick because I was 12, 13. But dad just had to work at it and work at it. And of course, mom's fluent, so that helped. Um, but it's interesting that it seems to you like there was an evolution. Maybe it was your evolution of
Maybe it was me,
understanding
but
French more,
yeah,
right?
it was probably a bit of a mix of like me getting more familiar with French and then maybe him speaking French more like with me. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
What questions do you have for me?
I'm curious what it was like just growing up with him because I feel like I would never really get to fully understand what that's like, you know. I think there's a pretty different role as a grandchild to
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think is? I'd love to hear what you think is different, or what you've kind of observed. What makes you think it was different?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's almost exactly the same. I remember my mom saying a couple of times it was pretty different for her, so I don't know. I feel like maybe
Mm-hmm.
it was I don't know. I mean, I think it's just a different kind of environment altogether. It's almost impossible
Well,
for it to not be like
100%.
exactly the
I
same.
think, your grandparents don't discipline you the same way that your parents do. And in 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 your situation, you didn't get to see them all the time. So when you do get together, it's like special occasion,
Yeah.
or on vacation, right? Like, or usually we would all be on vacation when we got together. So that's not real life.
Mm-hmm.
And the discipline, I don't think, comes as much into play, and it's not as much the grandparents' role either. Um, so I think that it seems to me that, and this was the same with me and my grandparents, that it was much more about enjoying each other and having fun and doing fun things. And when you grow up with someone, when as my dad, he was in charge, and he was who I looked up to, and he set the tone, and he had certain expectations, but he was also an incredibly gentle, wise person who was always there for me. I never felt that there was, a conditional
Yeah.
ness to the love. It was very unconditional and very accepting. And the other thing that was really cool, that you might not think, especially, sort of with a scientist and someone who uses that side of the brain. I do remember that he was always really supportive and enjoyed my creative endeavors. Um, like really supportive. And I just remember after dinner, sometimes we would put on records and I would dance around the dining room
Mm-hmm.
table. And I just remember him watching me, and he kind of had this like amused look on his face. And it was very, I don't know, it was very encouraging. I felt very supported. I didn't feel self conscious, whereas I normally do and did. But there was something about sort of like dancing around with my dad, for my dad, that was really special.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I also remember the day that I realized, I was very, very little, probably 4 or 5 years old. But I remember telling mom that I am definitely going to marry dad when I get older. He's going to be my husband for sure. Like I was so sure. And when she told me I couldn't, that is one of my very first experiences with like abject, just sadness, disappointment, and despair. Like now who am I going to marry?
Right.
And it's every little girl wants to marry her dad in some ways. Because throughout my life I've looked for so many of his qualities in my partner. um and I'm very, I mean, Tim, I think there's a lot of things about him and the way that he deals with the world and is very sort of calm and ponders things and doesn't make quick decisions, and considers all of the options and alternatives before making a decision. And that's all very comfortable to me because that's how I'm used to the man in my life dealing with things, honestly.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I can definitely see a lot of, common qualities with Tim now that you bring that up.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I just remembered the other day, on the other end of the spectrum, I went through a phase in high school when I was really into the Doors and Jim Morrison. And I decided to tell everybody at school that Jim Morrison wasn't dead. He was actually my dad.
Well, how did that go?
I felt great. I felt like I was mysterious, and it was just
Yeah,
that was this narrative that I wanted. Something about the most important man in my life and this musician that I idolize being the same person. Like, how cool would that be?
right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Do you have any
So,
bad memories that you can remember?
oh yeah, for Daddy's birthday, let's talk about some really bad.
Yeah,
No, that's the thing. I mean, Miles, I say this and people don't believe me, but you probably will because you know him. I have never heard my father raise his voice. I
wow.
do not know what him yelling sounds like,
Yeah, I believe it.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you get it.
I don't think you can say that about many people.
I can't say that about anybody I've ever met in my life. He's the only one.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll share with you a story about when I probably got into the biggest trouble.
Hmm.
This is so weird. So, mom was out of town and dad came home from work, and we must have had a babysitter or something. I don't remember that. I just remember that my best friend Patty and I had gone into the attic, and in our attic was all these old camping supplies that mom and dad had, and they had actually met in a camping club. So they still had all of their gear, and I remember going through it with my friend, and we pulled all these different things out, and then we took a lampshade and some pots and pans and some bottles of alcohol out of the cabinet, and we didn't drink it or anything, but we just posed. We took the camera and we took all these pictures of ourselves, like literally with the lampshade on our head, lampshade on our head, pots and pans, and like the booze. And we were like taking all these, we thought they were really funny pictures.
Yeah.
Well, dad came home from work and he was not pleased. But rather than getting yelled at or getting in trouble, guess what happened?
Hmm.
We'll talk about it after dinner. I had to sit there and eat dinner and not talk about it and know that I was in huge trouble. I didn't even know, I wasn't even sure if it's because we went through the stuff. I think it freaked him out. I mean, I have to ask him. Maybe he remembers. I think it freaked him out that we went into the, liquor cabinet and pulled out the bottles. Of course, we didn't drink it or anything. It was all just for
Hmm.
the photo op. But I do remember him coming home and knowing I was in huge trouble, but not getting yelled at and not knowing what my punishment was and having to sit through a silent dinner because it was dinner time first and we were going to have our dinner and then I would find out my punishment.
Man, those are the worst, huh?
Yeah, and if that's my worst childhood trauma, how lucky am I?
Not so bad, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What else? Ask me another question.
Hmm. I was thinking the only bad memory I have of him is when he got a little upset at Lucas because Lucas called Memmy a silly goose.
Oh, what?
A silly goose.
Ooh,
Yeah.
your mom or grandma? I didn't hear who he called.
Lucas called Memmy a
Oh,
silly goose.
mommy.
Yeah.
Ah.
That set off something, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that was the worst it ever got.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that brings up the point that, you know, they have my parents, your grandparents have this incredible bond. And the way that they regard each other and take care of each other and respect each other, I think that's where that was coming from, that it just wasn't respectful enough. Even though it was a little grandson, playing with his grandma. I remember doing that too with both of my grandmothers, just being a little bit out of hand, and it going from being playful to like a little too much, like tone it down. Um, One of my biggest memories of growing up overall is dad saying "du calme, du calme" all the
Hmm.
time. We were too loud, we were too this and that, and it was dad would just come in, and again he wouldn't yell at us, and we weren't really in trouble, but it was just "du calme."
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, the point of this obviously is that this is Daddy's 86th birthday. And we are just so happy that we're able to celebrate with him,
Oh yeah.
right?
And we're gonna have a real celebration when I get there as well. And we'll be able to do something
Yes.
with
So
everyone.
your birthday and Daddy's birthday, you guys share the month of November.
Yeah.
And so when you get here, and you'll be here on is it the 22nd?
Well, I think we leave on the 19th, I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
So my birthday's
okay.
on the 22nd. I don't think we're flying out then, but I'm pretty sure it's the 19th.
Okay. So yeah, that'll be really nice to celebrate both your birthdays together.
Yeah.
Mm. So happy birthday, Daddy,
Happy birthday, Daddy.
from the Chacha and Mo show.
Oh yeah. And our all tens of fans.
Our tens of fans. Love
Hmm.
you.